against Carlos Enrique Guimard, who was born April 6, 1913. He passed away September 11, 1998. Three-time Argentine champion was Guimard, and like his countryman Hector Rossetto, he became a grandmaster as a result of this tournament. He's an international master here, but after this event, he became a grandmaster, or as a result of this event. D4 from Guimard, Bobby with knight f6, an Indian game. Knight f3, pawn g6, East Indian game. Unless he plays here, then it becomes a king's Indian. But he doesn't. He plays bishop g5, which is Torre's attack, named for Carlos Torre Repetto. Torre was born November 29th, 1904, passed away March 19th, 1978. A Mexican chess player, first player from Mexico to become a grandmaster. Torre was. That title was conferred in 1977. He first came to prominence, international attention, when he attended the New York 1924 International Tournament. It was quite an epic tournament. He impressed both the American as well as the European masters with his high quality and his speed and his analytical ability. He was actually ranked 8th in the world following his European tour. Torre's career, however, was sadly cut short by mental illness. He spent much, if not all, of the remainder of his life in facilities following his breakdown in 1926. Dr. Reuben Fine, who was a great chess player in his own right, but he was also a psychologist, Reuben Fine visited him quite a few years later, found out that he was still playing quite well. Torre's attack, bishop g5, sad story. Bishop g7, the fianchetto defense, queen's knight d2, pawn d6, pawn e4, pawn h6, and here bishop takes knight is not the book move. The book line is bishop h4. Now that's going to be answered with g5, bishop g3, knight h5, pawn c3, and pawn e6 is the last move recorded in Volume A, Section 48 of the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. Now, the most common continuation from here is bishop d3. That's answered by queen e7, kingside castles, and knight to d7. Going back, Guimard played the bishop takes knight. Bishop takes bishop, bishop b5 check, pawn c6, bishop back to d3 here. An equal position when Bobby castles, and that's marked inaccurate. Surprising that castles gets marked inaccurate, c5 being called for here. Okay, so c5 puts the question to the d-man. Castles can't be bad. e5 is played here. Bishop back to g7. Queen e2. Pawn c5 here. Now pawn h4. My preference was to capture the c-man. Let's see what I get for that. I get a check mark. And after knight c6, I will castle up here. You could also take the d-man here with the c-man, I think. It gets a check mark. And then castle. h4 from Guimard. The type of play I don't make that often. I have made moves like that, but it's got to be at the right moment, although I do play it often in this kind of a structure. But I'm more principled and more traditional. Well, here after h4, c takes d4, gets a question mark. d5 being called for. That's going to be followed by bringing the knight out either to c6 or d7, depending on what white plays. If pawn takes pawn, then knight d7. If queen e3, then knight c6. Yeah. But Bobby c takes d4, h5, g5, marked inaccurate. Knight c6, queen e4 here, pawn f5. I thought rook e8 would be more appropriate. Just give your king a place to run. Oh, nope, inaccurate. Well, f5 was played. Don't take the d-man here. He played en passant, getting a star. Do not play queen takes d4, placing yourself in line here, which would allow black to consolidate with pawn takes the pawn, and you're compelled to trade here, aren't you? And look how dynamite black's position is all of a sudden. E takes f6 is the correct move. Rook takes the pawn, and knight takes the G. Man, what a move that is. And it gets a double exclam. A double exclam for Carlos Enrique Guimard. Nice. D5 to prevent the bishop from coming to C4 with check, but that's marked a mistake. Bishop F5, the best move. Hitting the queen. It's a better defense, isn't it? Instead, Bobby played D5. The ominous monkey wanted bishop G4 way before. You mean somewhere in here, like right now. He gets a check mark. But he's got another knight here. The other knight can take its place. All right, anyway, C5, H4, C takes D4, H5, G5, Queen E4, F5, en passant, and now Rook takes the pawn, Knight takes the pawn with a double exclam, D5, precluding Bishop C4, Queen H7 check, King F8, and now Queenside castles is a blunder. It is a blunder with F4 being called upon, and then after F4, you Kingside castle so that your Rook is on the F file. So, for example, after knight C6, we're not going to queenside, we're going to kingside and get a star. Well, he queenside castle, and you can really appreciate why he'd want to do that. Move your king way off to the refuge of this mass of pawns over here, because you don't want to move your king over here because you want to throw all these pawns up the board. That's kind of the theory, but it's not actually going to work here. Knight C6, and now knight B4 is looming. He played F4 now, and knight B4, as called for. And here Queen B6 is going to be a winning move. Note, you don't want to take that free-looking pawn. It's not as free as it may appear because your rook and king are on the same line now, and he can force a trade here. Okay, I could perhaps take and get a star, but yeah, you know what? The rook is pinned, so I'll attack the pinned piece. And now what are you going to do? The problem is taking is disastrous. You just have to give it back. Maybe bring your queen up here. You know what? Let him take with the pawn, and then put the pawn here, and his pawn becomes your friend. He's an obstacle to his own rook. But white is clearly winning anyway, but that's probably your best chance. So don't play rook takes the so-called free pawn. Knight b4 is the strong move. A3, and knight takes the bishop. Check. We don't want to take this knight here with our H-man because now H6 is really devastating. H6, after knight takes the bishop, white is still well in control. Obviously, after H takes G5, you don't want to play here because you've got this. Oopsie daisy! Knight takes D3 was played. Queen takes the knight. You don't want to open lines to your king, so queen takes the knight here. Now pawn takes the knight, and H6 is still played, but bishop takes. Don't take this with the rook. Taking with the rook is not the best bet. Now that you've got the advantage, you want to keep it. This would allow white to equalize. Let me show. This is not what was played. If here, then he trades off, and the queen comes back to H7, and white is back in the game. So we take that with the bishop. F takes G5, marked inaccurate. Bishop F5 hits the queen, and rook takes the bishop, getting a big red X. The idea, of course, is to skewer the king and the queen, but not the best move. Queen takes D4 is better. It's more betterer. Bishop takes the queen, rook does come to H8, and the king comes to G7. King F7 is the way to stay more firmly in control for whatever reason. Probably because this is now capturing with check at some juncture. He's going to grab the queen anyway. But that's not check anymore. So, right, that's the point. Now I can come here and pin the pawn so that you can't take my bishop. Yeah, okay, that's why. Because this is not check. If it's check, I've got to get out of check and then you win my bishop. Okay, smart. So king G7 is not the best move for that reason. Rook takes the queen. But Bobby says, I wasn't going to be taking your rook anyway. If you're going to take one of my rooks, it's not going to be the one that gives you tempo. It's going to be the one that puts your rook behind my pawns, and I'm still lined up here. That was a beautiful move. Rook takes the rook takes the pawn, check, forces the king to b1 in line with our bishop, and so Bobby plays rook takes the knight, bringing us to a endgame, but the better discovery apparently is the one that wins this rook after king moves out of check. It gives white the least activity. This gives white slightly more activity because the king can come over and defend this rook. But rook c2 check anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't understand. Why does it matter? I'm still getting this anyway. In fact, that's what he played. Rook took the pawn. Oh, I see, because now he doesn't have to move his king now. Okay, he takes the bishop. Rook takes rook. Rook takes the pawn. King and a rook against the king and a rook here. Rook d8 defends the d-man. That is a passed pawn. The e-man is a passed pawn. The bot preferred e6. Connect your passed pawns. Makes sense. And then when you move your rook, I'll move mine in line with your two weaklings. Okay, didn't like that. Just move your king up, I guess. Well, rook d8 was played. King c2. That's marked as a mistake. Rook a4 is his best hope. Rook a4, threatening the a-man. He'd have to play a6. Something like this. And then you can play a4, and you got the best chance of holding here. King c2 was played, king g6, rook f4, king takes the g-man, rook f7, rook d7 defends, king d3, king g6 hits the rook, rook f8, king g7 hits the rook again, rook a8, pawn b6 defends by discovery, king d4, king f6, and now e5 is being threatened, which would be massive. Rook f8 check, king e6, rook g8, king d6, pawn g4. He was trying to make good on his passed pawn, but maybe he should have gone for this check. It might have been worth a try, hoping for king c7. He's not going to play king c7. He'll play e6 and get an exclam. But he could hope for king c7, which is a blunder, but the reason it's a blunder is now I blockade everything. I blockade everything. I'm going to come up here and win this pawn. And then it's dead equal. So that's why I was thinking maybe rook g6, even though I only get a check mark. And of course, Bobby's not going to fall for that and play king c7, but these are the kinds of moves you have to play. You got to give your opponent the chance to blunder. At our level, that check might work. It'd be worth looking at. G4 from Guimard here. E5 check. King D3. Rook H7. He's going to drive him further back. G5. Again, Rook G6 might be more hopeful. Get a check mark. G5. King E6. G6. Rook H3 check. Yeah, I was thinking maybe Rook D7 and then put my king on F6. Check mark. And the idea is after king e3, king f6, and then maybe I can come here, and that'll take care of the passed pawn. Because this guy is white's only remaining hope, so that's where my focus would be. Instead, rook h3, king c2. I mean, he's winning either way, isn't he? Rook h2, apparently rook g3 would be the better choice, getting behind that passed pawn, and rooks belong behind passed pawns. And then, of course, the d4's coming as well. If he comes here, then I'm going to play king f6, super attacking the pawn, and it's the same as before. The passed pawn is doomed one way or the other. All right, rook h2 check, king b3, king d1 is the best choice with g7 lurking. It's the same thing, it's just different. Rook g2 now it's just a matter of time and technique. G7, king f6, rook d8, rook takes the g-man, rook takes the d-man, rook c7, isolating the king from assisting in stopping our e-man. Good technique. a4, e4. Rook h5, e3. Rook h3, rook e7. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. Rook h1, e2. Rook e1, king f5. King c3, king f4. King d2, not fast enough. King f3. Rook h1, rook d7 check, king c2, king g2. And his king is cut off by our rook. White resigned. There's nothing he can do. If he blockades, we're just coming over here, and you have to give up your rook for the pawn. and then it's a matter of time. Let's give you the numbers. 93.5 accuracy for Bobby Fischer and a single game rating of 2,900. So really good game there.